got a big show for you today. We've got all kinds of things we're going to talk about. In the first hour, in a few minutes, we're going to have security expert Ross McLean join us, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. Each week we go over different aspects of the city. Of course, we've had a big summer of shootings, etc., that have really horrified the city. And Ross, a former Toronto police officer, will talk about that. And we're also going to bring in Daryl Monahan, who has been on the show before, also a retired copper who knows a lot about a lot of things. And we're hopefully going to play some of the clips from Police Association President Mike McCormick, who was on with Jerry Agar yesterday with some very interesting ideas of what to do, really, in terms of leadership and where to take to the future. And we're going to be asking Ross and Daryl to comment on that and give some of their views and what they see as the pros and cons and criticism and that kind of thing. Ross McLean has been listening to all this. Before we do that, just one last word about the Orange thing, and then we'll get into the Toronto situation, Ross.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm seeing a lot of parallels between the situation we had with the violence in Toronto and the accountability for the violence in Toronto, as we're seeing with the problems finding accountability with the Orange scandal. So
there is parallels there.
Very much so. A lot of it has to do with your leadership and your structure and how you decide to hold your people accountable.
Now, we've had this situation here this year. Obviously, it didn't start with the Eaton Centre shooting, but let's start there. And then it went into, obviously, the Danzig Street situation. There's been many other things. You've heard a lot of things spoken. We got a clip from Mike McCormick on Agar. We're working on that as well. But you heard that series of interviews. You've heard what the chief has said and what he originally said and what he later tried to do. He's been on with John Tory as well. What's your assessment of where we're at? As a former police officer, but also a security analyst and expert.
Yeah, well, that's where I've got an interesting piece to bring to the game here, Joe. I've worked on the police side of it. I understand how it works. I understand how the accountability works there. I've worked on the private side, and I understand at the very highest levels on the private side of security. I can go into more of that later. But when I look at what's happening now, I believe that the people of this city, the people of this province, they don't deserve to have this situation spun. They deserve to hear the real truth of what's going on and not have PR people giving spin.
You think that a lot of that's happening now? So you think that when Acting Deputy Chief McGuire said that this is not the state of affairs in the city, people right away recognize that as spin?
This violence is causing havoc in our city, in our community, and it's a community problem. It's a city problem. And if you're going to sit there and tell me and not give me the facts to allow me to help you deal with it or let me know what the risks are to my family living in this city, I got a real problem with that.
You see this whole thing with Danzig Street, and, there was a little baby that had a bullet right through the skull. I can't even imagine. And then obviously we lost 2 young people. And we had people say that they didn't want to work overtime, that they want to ruin their summer. Police officers actually said that. They don't get to decide that. I mean, they're supposed to serve, and you're a former cop. I hope you don't get defensive, but I just don't get that. I mean, the whole idea is to serve, to keep the city safe, and they do a great job in many other instances. I'm not talking about that, but in this situation, I actually heard somebody say that, and I couldn't believe it.
Well, look, it's almost when you want to talk about these topics, you have to give your disavowing of being an anti-cop person or some such thing. Listen, I'm a law and order guy. I've been that way my whole career. I started out working in the police department doing that. I moved over to private security, worked at, the highest levels there. I protected billionaires. I worked for Fortune 50 companies. I protected the Fort Knox of Canada, if you will. And one of the things, so I'm a law and order guy, but one thing I'm not is someone who's not doing their job well or someone who's trying to cover it up. That I'm not for. I'm for leadership and accountability. It's the only way you get to solve these problems.
Well, let's play a clip here from Mike McCormick on Jerry Agar. He's the Toronto Police Association president.
A lot of times you're sort of dancing on the head of a pin because the more guns are out there, and just like we saw in Danzig and you see in the Eaton Centre, willingness to use that firearm. So that's a huge concern.
So he's saying that there's a lot of guns out there. He's acknowledging it. Originally, they didn't really acknowledge it. I don't know whether they, I don't think that they lied about it. I just don't think they wanted to go there. And I think that the media made them go there. And obviously the second shooting on Danzig Street, just, the chief himself came out and said it was the worst ever. But you hear the Police Association president talking about the frustration and the kind of concern that he has, for his members.
Well, I listened to his interview, and, there was some things he said that were somewhat accurate and some that were spin because of the position that he holds. And, a bit of that is some of my problem with that, Joe, is Mike McCormick is the president of the association. He's not on the police department. He's not paid by the police department. The Police Act doesn't apply to him, although perhaps it probably should for people who work with the association. And he's the one who's making an interview telling how the police are going to run policing and safety and security in the city. I think it should be the chief out speaking. It should be someone like Deputy Slowly out speaking. That's who should be speaking.
Well, Deputy Slowly is an exciting kind of person that everyone's just dying to get to know. I tried to, and I'm going to continue to try to get him on my show, whether it's on the late shift or perhaps when I fill in for Jim Richards later in the week. I haven't had any success yet. If he's listening to the show, he knows I want to get him on the show and hear some of his points of view. I don't know whether he's the next chief for Toronto, but I know a lot of people feel he should be.